So my talk is moving from insecurity to inner security. So for the majority of my life, I have suffered and struggled with insecurity. Now, it has manifested itself in as it's called glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. Now, to be honest, this is actually something that I still deal with to some degree. And it's two reasons that I should tell you that. One is because I like when I say I'm moving from insecurity to inner security, I like people to know that it's still something that I'm learning right now. And also I say that because in case I start sweating profusely and run out of here, you will know exactly why I did it. So one of my early teachers in the School of Metaphysics used to tell me that if you want to deepen your understanding of something or draw the understanding out of you, then you should give a lecture or a talk on it. So that's another reason why I'm giving a talk on this. And also, I'm giving a talk as well because I'm hoping that someone can learn something from my experiences. Because I've read as I was preparing for this, I saw that in a number of surveys that 3 out of every 4 people have some issue with public speaking, experience some type of anxiety. So hopefully I can share some of my tools that I've been working with in order to assist. Now, I avoided this for a lot of my life. I simply just wouldn't put myself in positions where I would have to speak publicly because I would either begin to sweat profusely, forget what I was going to say, have crazy experiences. So, but you know how it goes is like when you really need to learn some kind of lesson in life or improve in some area, we tend to continue to draw those experiences to us and those opportunities to us. So through life, I continue to draw opportunities to speak publicly. And so back in mid-2010, I experienced a lot of transformation in my life. I ended a long-term relationship that I was in for 6 years. I quit smoking cigarettes. I started eating healthy. I lost about 50 pounds. And I started attending this place called the Centers for Spiritual Living, which is like a metaphysical type of church. So when I went there, I ended up taking this class, which was like a 12-week course called the Foundations class, where they taught meditation and also something called affirmative prayer. And during the class, it was in a very intimate setting where you really had an opportunity to connect with people on a deep level, which is something that I never allowed myself to do. I was always brought up in a situation where men didn't cry, men didn't show a lot of emotions. And so I just never allowed myself to be vulnerable until I was in this class and people were sharing such deep things that I felt that it was necessary for me to at least share some of my experiences. So I can say that I took some baby steps in this area. And so at the end of the class, it was asked that everybody give a special project at the end of the course. So honestly, I just couldn't really think of anything to do for my class project. I started procrastinating, it got down to the last minute, and all of a sudden I thought, okay, let me just write a rhyme about some of the things that I learned in the course and some other life experiences, put those in and see how it goes. And what happened is, in the midst of writing that, there was an inner knowing that started to surface. It's like I knew that people were going to really dig it for some reason. I had no reason to believe that, but I just knew it for some reason. And so when class project time came and I performed it, I was standing there in front of the class, sweating profusely, sweat dripping on my paper, and I'm just reading it through. And when I was done, everybody stood up and gave me a standing ovation, and it was amazing. And so I wasn't even still enough in my mind to actually receive the ovation because I hurried up and like shuffled back to my seat with my head down and, kind of just received it and then, kind of just let the moment pass. But it was so exhilarating. It was the first time that I think I really felt fulfilled on a soul level. But I went from being up here to all of a sudden back down here when it hit me that in order for me to experience this again, I am going to have to confront my greatest fear, which is public speaking. So it's like, I just had this great experience where people were really moved by something that I did, and in order for me to do it again, I got to get back up there again and experience this whole thing over again. And so I had a couple of encouraging friends. One of the people was the teacher who taught that course named Veronica, and she was a poet as well. And she was, after I finished, she was like, I'm going to use you. Okay. And so she encouraged me to start doing open mics and performing at different events. And so I actually started doing that. And so over the past few years, I've performed in front of crowds of just a few people to a few hundred people. And in the process, I've learned a number of things about overcoming insecurity and overcoming fears. The most prominent thing that I say that I've come to understand about it is the understanding of the essential life skill of reasoning my way through experiences. I've come to realize now that fear is not necessarily a negative, at least it doesn't have to be a negative. It just depends on how we choose to use it. I love synchronicity. So, you know how on Facebook, each day you receive some kind of message saying that you had this memory with such and such on this day. So, I had this experience last week where it showed that I sent out a post back in 2011, which so much related to this talk, so I was like, I gotta share this, it's like so in sync. So I wrote this that day. I said, it says, my whole life it seems that I've been learning the lesson of facing my fears with faith in my higher self. And I've noticed that when I choose to face those fears, they turn around and run, then I chase those fears. And once I catch up to them, I embrace those fears. I love them, I transcend them, for I realize that they are but a light to be used to illuminate the path which leads to my next step of evolution. So it was funny how, I wrote that years ago, and, I was giving this talk this week, and I was speaking to the fact that fears are basically, they just simply show us the areas of our life that we need to respond to. That's all the fear is. It's like, oh, I'm afraid of public speaking? Okay, that's the very thing that I need to start paying attention to and that I need to face. So from this perspective, I think that I'm learning to use fears as like faithful employees to make them work for you rather than against you. So now when I spoke of reasoning. Now when I speak of reasoning, it's a process which consists of three factors. It is the productive use of our memory, it is the productive use of our attention, and the productive use of our imagination, which relates to memory, the past, attention, the present, and imagination, what we project into the future. So let me deal with memory first. So our brains are always collecting data and creating memories from our experiences. Now, traumatic experiences tend to leave a deeper impression in our minds, and we tend to form beliefs based on those memories. Now, old beliefs can haunt us in the present without having any conscious awareness of where the feelings actually come from. For instance, somewhere in my childhood, I developed the unconscious beliefs that I need others to accept me. And what others think of me became more important than what I actually thought of me. I didn't feel secure unless I felt accepted. And so as an adult, leading up to a poetry performance, my whole mind would be flooded with thoughts reflecting my worry. Thoughts like, what if they don't like it? What if I forget the words? Is this material really as good as I think it is? They liked the last one, but what if I'm a one-hit wonder? So I would have all of these limited type of thoughts flowing through my mind right before I get ready to perform. And then I begin to feel like this little bit of anxiety. And then, so I have overactive sweat glands. So if I'm like a little bit nervous, it looks like I'm a lot nervous. But really, I'm just a little uncomfortable, or I may have some energy flowing through me. But since I know that people can see that, then I start to project outward. I'm like, damn, they see the sweat. And then it becomes this whole thing, and then the momentum gets to going. And so, what happened is that the momentum of like previous experience of anxiety would start to come to my mind, and before I knew it, I would just have an avalanche of negative thoughts weighing down on me. Now, of course, this is not how a true reasoner would use memory. A true reasoner would, or someone who's successful at reasoning, would use memory productively, being able to look at every situation that occurs in the past and perceive how it can benefit us today. So basically, a reasoner can effectively look for and eventually see the good in every experience, because it's always there, even when it's hard to find. Now, stress, anxiety, and panic can still our ability to think straight, concentrate, and to access those higher faculties of our mind, which allow us to perceive reality from this perspective. Now, at this point, we must quiet our mind, still it, and slow the negative momentum that is building. And that requires for us to hone the ability to wield our attention, which is the next step of reasoning, it's being present. So I once read somewhere that our attention is our most precious commodity, a long time ago. And I totally believe this is true. I mean, think about it. For someone to converse with us, for someone to sell us something, for someone to teach us anything, we must first give them our attention. This is why businesses pay so much for ad agencies to create memorable commercials and purchase commercial airtime. I actually looked this up. In the Super Bowl this year, it was viewed by approximately 112 million people. It was aired by CBS, and the station charged $5 million for a 30-second commercial, which equates, when you break it down, to about $166,000 per second. So, just from a financial perspective, you see how valuable our attention is. People really pay a lot. We're willing to pay a lot for it. And so, speaking of value, I used to wonder why I tended to feel more valuable and important after somebody really received me or truly listened to me. I mean, when somebody is really listening, not just, thinking some other thoughts while they're, seeming like they're listening to you or waiting to talk, but really, really listening to you. And I realize this because the listener has just given me their most precious commodity, their attention. They must have given me the most valuable thing they have to give. And so when somebody gives you that, it makes you feel good because they just give you the best thing that they could ever give you. And so I've learned more about the value of my attention and how to direct and focus it through working with anxiety and kind of the anxiety that I'll feel right before going on stage. So I came to realize that I needed to be able to bring my attention to the present moment, and I learned that I could help do this by first slowing down and taking deep breaths. There's a saying that says that control the breath, you control the mind. You control the mind, you control the body. So if you can simply control your breath, it changes your whole state of consciousness. So conscious breathing not only calms our mind, it makes us more aware of how energy is moving through us. So we become more self-aware, and in becoming more self-aware, we can then take a moment to choose to face the fear by acknowledging the truth. And this is the key part to it, acknowledging and accepting. So what I would do is acknowledge the truth of the moment, which is, in the present reality, I am afraid and I'm starting to feel panicked, which is what would be happening to me. I'm afraid, I'm starting to feel panicked. Yet I'm not in any real danger. Because I've experienced real danger, and that wouldn't be real danger. And so by simply doing that and not attempting to ignore it or pretend like it's not happening, which tends to make things worse because what we resist persists. This places us on a path to overcoming panic by working with it, not against it. It gives you that brief moment of a degree of separation from the symptoms, where you can arrive at a point to where you actually can reach for a more productive thought. Because all we need is that little bit of a break. You slow down the momentum of the negative thoughts, and you receive just that little bit of space in between the thoughts to where you can then form a new thought. It's not about erasing the old ones, it's about creating new ones. And so, again, like I said, I've experienced true danger in the past, and so I could just, start to reason through this, like, this is not true danger. I'm all of a sudden going into this fight or flight survival mode when there's nothing, really dangerous about this moment. And so when I've become able to embrace that truth, I could bring my consciousness into a place of neutrality where I could then concentrate and focus my attention on my purpose for being there in the first place, which is to share what I have to give and hopefully add value to people's lives. So as I become more willing to face my fears and move through this process, a foundation is becoming laid, which is the foundation upon which security is built. Now, each time I do this, it gets easier and easier. The key is that we have to allow ourselves to explore our fears with the intent of gaining understanding. Now, a little less than a year after I began writing poetry, I attended a concert. This is a very important story. I attended a concert by my favorite poet of all time, this guy named Saul Williams. After this, you may want to look him up. He is the dopest poet of all time. And before he began his performance, he asked the audience if anyone would like to come up. He'd like to give the artist from the local area an opportunity to come up and do something before he starts. He was like, anybody want to come up? And so the young lady who invited me, she's a poet too, and so we both looked at each other, and she nudged me, and then I nudged her, and some people just automatically start running up to the stage, and we're like, because I wasn't really confident in my material, I just didn't know, and the insecurity started to bubble up. And so Needless to say, I did not go up there. I let the insecurity win out, and immediately I felt terrible. I felt deflated. And after I heard the first couple of poets perform, I was like, damn, my stuff it's at least on par with that. If, you know, not better, not to be egotistical, but not better, you know. And so, needless to say, the memory of not giving myself that experience and sharing my poetry while being on stage with my favorite poet right next to me still makes me feel a little terrible now when I think about it. And so, on the other end of the spectrum, I've had a few experiences of actually bombing during a performance. And after having this experience, I came to realize that the pain of not trying to succeed is infinitely worse than the pain of trying to not succeed. It's like Oprah had this, I read this book by Oprah called What Do I Really Know? And she described this as, if you have the opportunity to dance, dance. You know, don't sit it out. Always dance. And it's so true. Always give yourself the opportunity to dance. So that's the attention part of it. So now I want to talk about the imagination part of reasoning. So I'm sure most of you have heard that our thoughts create our reality. Now, I don't just believe this to be true. I know this to be true. We can consciously create through our use of visualization, which is the direct engagement of our imaginative faculty. It is the cognitive process of purposefully generating a visual mental image. Now, using the memory, we can draw upon images that are stored in our brain, recreate them in our mind's eye, and in order, we can hold it there as we kind of inspect and perceive whatever the image is, and then we can transform those images into more desired ones. So consequently, what can happen is that we can actually change the emotions and feelings associated with that image, and begin alleviating some of the psychological pain, including, you know, anxiety, sadness, and help improve our self-confidence and self-esteem. Now, during my time frequenting poetry clubs, I was introduced to the skill of visualization, and I began spending a few minutes each day, either in my meditation area, which at the time was in my closet, and or out and about throughout my day, just visualizing myself successfully performing my poetry. I would just see myself on stage, and since I had had a couple of great experiences of like a couple of like standing ovations, I would just keep that image. Every time I see myself going up, I would see that happening, or something even beyond that, you know, happening. And so my type of poetry can be very energetic. So I'd image myself being inwardly peaceful while on the outside being boldly dramatic in my expression. And I'll show you a little piece of that after I finish this. So it felt as though I was kind of paving the way to have those experiences, and more I found my experiences reflecting what I had imaged. Now, whenever I hit the stage to share poetry, I am usually full of confidence because I've given myself numerous experiences of acknowledging, accepting, and facing my fears associated with it. I visualize myself succeeding over and over, and I use my memory productively by actively, again, looking for the good in all my past experiences, especially the ones that weren't so pleasant. Now, through harmonizing with what we call the universal law of proper perspective, I realize that ultimately every experience that occurs in life is in and of itself a neutral event. How we choose to perceive the event, how we choose to perceive ourselves, determines how an event affects our lives. Now, I found that life is a lot more fulfilling when I choose to focus less on the outcome of events and more on what I become through the experience of the events. This is what brings me inner security. Therefore, no matter whether I label them successes or failures, all my experiences are of great value, for they have all granted me what I most desire, knowledge of myself. Now, in dealing with this subject of insecurity, I realize that I have barely scratched the surface, as insecurities manifest in many ways beyond public speaking. And I feel that all insecurity ultimately comes from one having an unhealthy perception of oneself, and thus experiencing a sense of separation from one's source and one's true self. Therefore, I believe that the most important thing that we can do for ourselves is to strive to remember the truth of who we are at all times. So, I wrote a poem to remind myself of the truth of who I am, and to help to remind others of the truth of who we are collectively. And I'd like to share this with you. So, I have my lovely assistant here joining me in a moment. I start this poem off, I call it Who Am I? And I started off by asking myself those three essential life questions, which is, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? These are the questions I pondered most of my life in the midst of growing, but now I am knowing, not only thinking, my third eye is blinking. At times I focus and have motives as I contemplate my life's meaning. I've learned to deeply probe myself so I can first meet the know the self and soak up rays of light forever reaching to grow myself. So who am I is the question I first proposed, and if you read between the lines of my prose, my intent is that it shows that I am, yes we are, metaphorically and metaphysically, a rose. Yes, a rose. Yet we are not just a typical ordinary rose, no. We are that atypical, extraordinary rose that patiently grows up through those typical little spaces and holes way down deep within the cracks of concrete. Now, some of us as seeds sometimes seem to lack faith or simply disbelieve in the greatness in which we are indeed to achieve. So for some, there exists a faithless feeling of being forever trapped in concrete. And yes, that concrete of which I speak is but a symbol for fear and doubt, being that those are the greatest enemies of our dreams. And I said that to say this, so whenever it appears or it seems that our lives are falling apart, that we have the ability literally to remind ourselves and remember that the living of life is an art, and thus be at peace while we walk with grace, knowing beyond the shadow of a doubt that those parts and pieces are ultimately falling perfectly into place. How? Why? Because you and I automatically inherit the inherent traits of perfect peace, grace, and of course what we place within our source, our undying, undenying faith. Yes, faith. Now I have read that faith with the measurements of a mere mustard seed may miraculously muster up enough might to move mountains. But at times it appears that no matter how hard I push or shove, this stubborn concrete above my head won't budge. But still, I refuse to lose faith, nor move to judge, nor hold some type of grudge from spite, because I know that at our core we are much more. We are the essence, the very presence of universal love and light. Yes, light. We are a magnificently orchestrated symphony of light. Now, some of you may find this difficult to believe, but in the beginning, when the Creator first created and birthed the heavens and the earth, well, I was there. But actually, to speak a bit more accurately, we are always here. So with that said, I'd just like to say that I first heard, before I first read those very first words when the Creator first said, "Let there be light." So it is no coincidence that I place a bit more emphasis upon the spiritually enlightening process which I have termed metaphysical photosynthesis. Because see, although I know that we are all limitless and most infinite, I must admit that there is this moments in which I tend to just forget the truth of who I am, and when I do, the light that I thus emit becomes similar to that of a teeny tiny light bulb. You know, the kind you just might find flickering on and off in the back room of some seedy, grimy nightclub. But see, once my light's plugged back into spirit's love, and my switch is flipped from the position of hopeless to refocus, backed by the power of about 1,000 supernovas, I begin to radiate with the pinpoint accuracy of a laser beam, no longer feeling the need to even chase my dreams, because through the magnetic magic within the universal mind and my own mind's imagination, I see that we can simply sit back, see to become a vibrational match to that which we wish to attract before we act, and simply embrace our dreams. And in fact, it seems lately my dreams chase me, which has enabled me to see that we are all capable of being and doing the most amazing things, more than the face of this place we call Earth has ever seen. Because like I was saying, we were happening before the physical birth of this Earth, before the duality and polarity of the yin and yang. In fact, I would suggest that we are more similar to the singularity which is thought to have been happening right before the Big Bang. Therefore, we more than just so happen to have been happening before there was even a such thing as being before. So, before I even begin to close, I would just like to propose that you and I are ancient souls as old as love, currently manifesting our destiny within 3 dimensions with the intentions to be as bold as love, which reminds me of the Jimi Hendrix experience, except this time instead of being caught up within the throes of drugs, this time within this rhyme, because this rhyme, it's mine, we should overdose on love.